Well, it's just gone 6 minutes past 7 here in the UK, and now I'm going to be something really horrible. I'm going to phone Australia and wake up a poor bloke at about 5 a.m. in the morning, I do believe. It's time for us to DEARROW. ARFM. That's the sound of DEARROW from the album which is coming out on November the 16th on 20th Century Music, an Australian band from way back in the 80s, and I'm pleased to say joining us on the line, Mr. Noel Hart.
How you doing there, Steve?
I'm doing great, and your good self? How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, things are really good. We're quite excited at the moment.
I remember way back, I mean, people like Derek Oliver and Hellraiser were raving about you back in the 80s. I even heard some demos, I think, at the time. What happened?
What happened? Well, we were cruising along pretty well in all the 80s. The band was together for 7 odd years, from 83 to 89. We had quite a bit of positive press from guys like Derek Oliver. You remember he reviewed us in Kerrang magazine in his Wimp Wire column.
Yep.
And also Cal Hellraiser. And we were actually quite a part of the international tape trading scene.
Yes, yeah.
So through that medium, we basically we heard, internationally through that circuit, but we never actually signed a deal with anybody. Unfortunately, we had a publishing deal, management deal, did a lot of gigs, did a lot of recordings, but we just never pushed it over the line until now, 30 years later.
If I remember rightly, didn't Kim Fowley actually manage you?
Kim Fowley did have some input. He never actually signed the dotted line per se with Kim, but we did pre-production work with Kim. He lined up a management deal with himself and an Australian co-manager, which was Brian DeCourcy, who was actually managing Molly Meldrum at the time, which is quite a small world item, because Molly ended up launching the label Melodian, which Roxas ended up signing to, and that's a whole other story, which I guess we can get into. But yeah, Kim did some pull. He also got us a publishing deal with Pierce Southern, an American publishing company at the time, and sort of took things to another level. But again, for some reason, things just petered out just at key moments, and things just sort of faded out with Kim.
I mean, the quality on this album, considering I'm pretty sure that they're all original demos, aren't they? They've probably been remastered and reworked, but the quality of the product is really, really good.
There are original demos. They're pretty much, when we recorded them, they were, I'd say they were almost release quality. They were recorded at some of the finest studios in Melbourne, and we had great engineers and producers working with us. And even though they were demo tapes, quotation, we kind of we sort of saw them as something that we were proud of, and we thought we could potentially distribute around to take it to that next level of the proverbial signing, which as I say, it hasn't happened till 20th century music has come along, which is it's actually quite interesting, because an indie label, and the premise behind them is everything is pre-millennium, so it's sort of an admirable undertaking, really.
They have put out some very good stuff, and this is one of their best releases, I think, in my opinion.
Well, thanks. It's great to hear that. We're getting quite a bit of good feedback, and it's as I say, it's been interesting, because the original versions, it's great to have them finally being released, because 4 of the songs have been covered by other Australian bands, a couple by Roxas on their album Night Street, and a couple by another Melbourne band, White Widow. So people will be quite sort of surprised to hear the original versions finally coming out.
We know the White Widow guys very well. In fact, we did a gig with them about 3 weeks ago over here in England. So.
Oh, was it Rockingham?
Yes, that's right. Yeah. Yes.
Great.
Nice bunch of lads. Really good bunch of lads as well.
Excellent. Yeah, well, they've covered 2 of the songs on the upcoming DEARROW album, on 2 different albums of theirs, and as I touched on before, Roxas also covered a couple of the songs on the DEARROW album, and interestingly, Juno Roxas, the singer of Roxas, sings on 2 unreleased tracks on the DEARROW CD.
Oh yeah, he was because he was in the band for a while, wasn't he?
Well, we always had a problem with singers, Steve. I guess it's the singer syndrome, And yes, he was sort of in the band, but he wasn't really. There wasn't anything official. But that's often how bands work.
Yeah.
And it's always word of mouth, and who's doing this and that, and everybody's toying around with different recordings and writing and sessions and gigs and what have you. And there's often a lot of grey areas, which I would peg Juno in that, in the sense that he wasn't really in the band, but he wasn't really out of the band. It was sort of a middle grey area, let's say.
Yeah. Now, when I listen to this album now, I think, compared to a lot of the product that was being released on major labels back in that sort of period, this stands up well against them. Do you think, and I'm not trying to be controversial here, that had you been an American band or maybe even a British band, you had more chance of getting an album out or signing a deal back in the day? Do you think Australia was just a step too far for a lot of labels?
Possibly, yeah, it was, and also melodic AOR rock was not necessarily underground in Australia. It just didn't have the large following that it had in the UK and Europe and the US or South America as well, or even Asia for that matter. And at that period in Australia, a lot of new wave commercial music was at the forefront. Bands like Crowded House and Cold Chisel, and I mean, decent bands. It just wasn't the genre that we were focusing on, and as a consequence, we sort of we just didn't make the inroads that we possibly could have.
And I would imagine even sort of touring in your own home country back in that time was a bit difficult because, you've got, cities like Melbourne and that, but if you wanted a gig in Perth, it's not exactly around the corner, is it?
No, exactly. We were pretty much a Melbourne-based band. We did gigs around, in other towns and cities and what have you, but correct. It's tricky, pushing the band to that next level in Australia, and we felt quite far removed, even though we did have, as I say, the tape trading thing connected us to the rest of the planet in the sense that we were also hearing bands from all over the world and probably influenced, as were they, by similar artists through that whole circuit. And obviously there were the release bands that everybody knew, but also the underground tape trading scene was quite predominant. It was quite it was an interesting scene, I believe, and it's just kind of funny that the humble cassette was having to delve through all the old demos for this recording. It's just I sort of revisited the humble tape, and it's been an interesting little exercise. You think that little cool little item unto itself is probably not appreciated in this day and age.
Oh, I don't know.
All those moving parts and what have you. And it's just,
true.
It's kind of been interesting.
I mean, my radio career started in 1983, and trust me, a lot of my early radio shows relied on those tape trades, I'll tell you.
Well, really, I mean, that's how we all not only shared music, but also within the band. I mean, we'd record all our rehearsals and gigs and what have you, and then we'd go home and pick them all apart and do dubs for each other. And it was really a means to take the songs further as well. And it's actually on the CD that's about to be released. We've actually focused a little bit on the CD in the sense that the actual CD itself has our demo tapes and rehearsal tapes, which are all sort of like handwritten and what have you, printed on the actual CD, and then it sits on a liner tray underneath, which is more cassette tape. So it's sort of like tapes on top of tape. So it's sort of taking that theme to its the next level. Which we're having a lot of fun with that. So it's been great,
Well, I'll tell you what, it's absolutely fabulous that you finally got this out onto what we call modern media, i.e. CD, and people will be able to realise exactly what they missed, because I'll tell you, there's some really good songs on this album. It's a fine collection.
Well, that's great. We really appreciate it. And as I say, we've had quite a good amount of feedback already, and it hasn't even come out. So it's been great for us. And go on, sorry.
No, as I say, the PR and the press are doing good things, because people do need to buy this album, by the way.
Well, we're hoping. We've recently launched a Facebook page for DEARROW, so we're hoping people will, focus on that a little, and we're putting up new things each day, and there's lots of memories and photos and contracts and letters and magazine articles and a whole hash of stuff that I've obsessively saved. That's been a good little focus for us as well.
So what about nowadays? What are you up to now?
Well, everybody's doing different things. They've all, some of us still quasi involved in music. Drag and the guitar player, he went on to join Roxas. And then he's been pretty much involved in both TV and artist production over the past couple of decades. Still got his finger in the proverbial pie. And in fact, he's just recorded some stuff with a female artist named Tyrion, who I actually wrote some lyrics for, and came out really good, actually. So everybody's been sort of doing similar type things. We've all, post DEARROW, we all worked in different bands and did session work and recordings and what have you. And I actually moved to LA for about 17 years.
Oh, right.
From 1990 on. So that was a good experience. I actually managed a second-hand bookshop on Melrose Avenue in Hollywood for 10 years, which was a fun little enterprise.
Yeah.
So we've all sort of pretty much had our, fingers in the creative realm, let's say.
Yeah, I mean, what about, is there any chance of maybe a reunion gig to celebrate the CD?
No gigs per se. We've actually toyed around with the idea of resurrecting some of the old tracks that never got demo recorded. We've got a lot of more album-orientated material, longer epic-type tunes that never really were recorded because we were sort of saving those for the proverbial album. Never got recorded. So the songs that we did record onto demo were generally shorter and catchier songs, which is pretty much what's appearing on the CD. Not that we don't, love those. I'm just saying we do have some lengthier tunes which we're contemplating playing around with and re-recording. So we'll see.
That sounds like a good idea to me. Well, Noel, thank you for taking time out to join us tonight on ARFM. I know it's silly o'clock in the day down there in Melbourne, but it's been a pleasure talking to you.
And when I think of all the time
That's the sound of DEARROW, of course, taken from their self-titled album. It's coming out November the 16th on 20th Century Music. And I'll tell you what, if somebody phoned me at 5 o'clock in the morning and wanted to chat, I think I'd be telling them what to do. But fair play to Noel. He knew it was coming and he woke up in time to answer the phone. If you want that album, I think you have to go onto the 20th Century Records website, or you may be able to, of course, get it on the usual sort of international sites where you can buy CDs.